people of the internet, my name is Otuojegero, and this is Political Headache. Political Headache is a platform for which I mean very well, politically. I want us to talk about politics in a way that we do not talk about politics in this country. Yeah. The politics in this country is politics of patronage, and the politics of this country is the business of people, where people are lied to that we're going to do this, but we don't do it. But by the time you're knowing the fact, it is actually after the fact. Okay? So people of the internet, thank you very much for always joining us at Political Headache. Today I am having a gentleman that I one of the ways I like to describe Bright Shitemi is that he's a convener. He's a man that puts several minds together for a particular purpose. When Bright Shitemi first told me about a movement called Kikao, I downplayed it and said, "This guy is, I'm tired of this politics of let's come, we talk, and nothing happens." So, but right now, Kikao is has a representative of 40 in 40 counties.
Yes.
And Kikao is perhaps one of the biggest movement in the country.
It is.
Kikao, Bright will tell me if I am wrong. I don't know whether Kikao wants to take political power or Kikao wants to change the way we think about politics, or both.
It is actually both. For a long time, many people have been involved in efforts to change the constitution, efforts in activism, but very few of them have made the transition into mainstream politics.
Yeah.
So Kikao is keen not just to change the way we view leadership, but to produce the leadership today, right? It is not enough that you agitate. For a long time, we've been talking to people who are not hearing us. And it culminated into the anti-finance bill protests of 2024, when everybody and their dog were saying, "Gentlemen, ladies, listen, this is what the country wants." What did the parliamentarians do? They decided, to hell with what you're saying, we will do what we want, not what you want. And that's why, to complete this loop, we have to get into governance.
Yeah. And that is interesting, because when people were going to the streets last year, around June, Kikao was present in that demonstration, agitating.
As individuals. Kikao was not formed by then.
Kikao was not formed by then?
No.
Is that so?
Yes. Kikao was formed in the middle of the protests. I took part in the protests.
Okay.
I went to on the day people were going into parliament. I was on the streets. And as I had the bullets ringing in the air, I thought about what can we do that is sustainable. We have many, many young leaders who are on the streets, some of them are even shot dead. People like Rex Masai, you can see the gentleman, that's a fine young man who'd have been a leader in this country. And so I thought about bringing together a team of young people, predominantly, because the agitation then was being moved by young people, to talk about how can we strategize, not just to agitate on the streets, but also get involved in politics and leadership. Because that transition is where many people miss out. And in an environment where politics takes hundreds of millions of shillings to do politics, how do we do it differently and at scale, so that Kenyans, because I felt in that moment that Kenya had reached the age where people had had enough of the government and they needed to see a different thing in leadership. And people called it a revolution. It is a revolution. It's in our minds, it's in our hearts, especially for the many young people who are there. And so Kikao then became a convening of all these voices across the country. I remember the very first person I reached out to was Shakira Wafula. I'd seen her, she was actually the face of the revolution. And I reached out to her, reached out to a few other people, like Kasmuel, who was also the the face at that point. I even reached out to Morara and I said, guys, we need to transition this thing to the next level. We need to bring together all these voices and create a credible political force. And that is how Kikao was born.
Can I ask you something? Because
Yes.
this is very interesting. When you mentioned that people of the internet, I want to dial back a little bit and take 2 steps back or 3 steps back and ask this gentleman about where he's coming from, who he is, what he does, and what he thinks is wrong with Kenya. But something interesting that you said there that I want to pick on.
Yes.
And I hope you're going to be bold and talk about it. You say that you approached some the ringleaders.
The leading lights, let's call
The
them.
leading.
People
you don't
who
want
are
to call them ringleaders.
no, leading lights.
The leading lights.
Yes.
But it is very, very interesting
Yeah.
that you reached out to the leading lights.
Yes.
And I can only assume what some of them told you. But looking back, we now see Casimwell has gone against the grain, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
We can see Morara has obviously quit politics and is back into his what he was doing, which is selling furniture and a few other things. I'm not sure where the other lady is. The lady is called
Shakira Wafula.
Shakira Wafula. I'm not sure where Shakira Wafula is, but a lot of people have said that at some point the Gen Z or the people that were in the streets lost it. Should they have sat down at that time? And when I'm talking about sitting down, what you say is making a lot of sense because you sort of wanted to bring them and sit them down.
Together. Yes.
And chart the way forward.
Yes.
You know? And in my head, I'm thinking that without them, Kikao took off and is now in 40 counties. Without talking about individuals per se, looking back and seeing how these leaders sort of just did not do, I don't know how to say it, they did not become
What was expected.
Yes. And that has been there's a lot of blame that has been heaped on them that you guys had an opportunity to make a very good, platform or a very good project to run with and take over the government. But most of you did not do that. So individualism and people pulling back to themselves did not allow you to form something tangible that could shake the government even going further. When you had conversation with these people, what did you think about? Now I want you to talk about the absence of leadership that we've seen and that a lot of people have lamented over for a long time.
Yeah. So there are 2 things.
Yeah.
And I want to be very fair on all these 3 people. You know, they say youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah.
And as young people, we make mistakes sometimes. And you've seen mistakes being made by various young people across history, from superstars to politicians. Secondly, for a good thing to come, it takes time and experience. So many of us then lacked experience. We were venturing into a space where we had little know-how of how to navigate. Many people who shot into prominence had maybe 200 followers, and suddenly you have 1 million plus followers. Millions of people are watching you. 50 million Kenyans are following you. How do you deal with all that? Right? So, for example, even as I was reaching out to some of them, it was impossible to get to them.
Yeah.
Kasmul is someone I knew by virtue of having gone to the same high school. But someone like Shakira, I mean, she's getting what? Thousands of messages every day? How do you get to her and say, how does she sift out and know who is real, who is fake? And I guess across the board for all of them. But thankfully I got to Shakira through, she looked like someone I knew, and I figured it was a sister, and I got to her through that channel. And she joined Kikao. Actually, she was one of the key leaders that formed this organization. But looking back and where we are right now, yes, one would say individuals might have, I don't want to say failed. Some of them have faltered and fallen down. I hope they will rise up again and realize the true potential of what is happening. Because the revolution is not individuals. It is people across the board. And I think it still lives within many, many young Kenyans and many Kenyans of goodwill across the board. So I would say that if you study revolutions across the world, some even take up to 20 years, right? Some of them happen within months. Some of them take time. And I think ours is going to end up in a ballot revolution. With from what the work we've done with Kikao, all the feedback we're getting from the grassroots is that people want real change.
When you spoke with them,
yes,
what was the general summation of what you are feeling when you're speaking with them? Again, without talking about individual, were you disappointed?
Yeah, so when I engaged them, of course, some of them who I knew before did not respond to the messages. One of them was interested in, let me call it a personality cult. It was about them and them. Of course, one of them joined and we worked together for some time. But I mean, I got the sense that, you see, and that's why I say youth is wasted on the young, is that when you have this much publicity and power, actually, I don't think people realized how much power they had. I've gone to high schools where students were by Casmo. Back then, they said that is our figure of revolution. That is what we see and the leadership that we want. Morara, at some point, a huge force when it comes to holding the government accountable. But over time, my disappointment is that we could not bring all these voices together because we don't need money. We just needed to come together. And there were so many Kenyans of goodwill. You remember, Morara was able to fundraise, I think, even though he did not declare, and that's the problem that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I figure he must have raised hundreds of millions of shillings from well-meaning Kenyans. 100 shillings here, 200 shillings there. Some of us even contributed. So it happened. And if we build structure around that spirit, the structure culminating into because that is the Kikao dream, that it culminates into a political party. You see, you cannot take power with an NGO. You cannot take power with activism.
Yeah.
You cannot take power with, you have to have your own political vehicle. Your own. And I'm saying your own because many of these legacy political parties restrict or constrain young leaders who are coming up. Whether it's by structure, whether it's by a buddy system, where there is a particular line of people that can only come in, or due to finances, that many people lack the finances to get into mainstream politics. But I believe you could have been able to build a house. That process went on with Kikao, but that is my frustration.
Okay, I get it. I figured so. So I've spoken with you several times on the politics of this country. I want to ask you a question, but first of all, I want to ask you, who is Bright Shitemi? Because whenever I speak with you, you tell me that there is a formula for taking over a country. There's a formula for finding yourself on a platform or on a vehicle that actually takes power.
Yes.
And in your head, the route to taking over this country and making it a better place is very clear for people who can allow themselves to see it. I want to go back to you growing up. When you were growing up, what was your idea of a country? Where did you go to school? What were you brought up in privilege? Are you like those guys that used to steal motorcycles from State House, like Jimmy Wanjigi? who is Bright Shitemi? Because I think let's social proof you first, and then I ask you some of the hard questions that I've been meaning to ask you.
Thank you. So I was born in the year 1990, 1st of August, and born in. My mother told me just last week on my birthday that I was born at home. I didn't go to hospital, and by two neighbors who came, random neighbors, and they helped my mother birth Mr. Bright Shitemi. My formative years, I was born to a young family, of course. My father was a civil servant, working in the Ministry of Health as a public health officer. So you wouldn't call that a wealthy man. My mother was doing business. She ran a shop that was being supported by my father. So both of them were running this small business. And together, I would say my father was really invested in education. So he made sure that I was able to go to the best schools. So I went to schools with those Jimmy Wanjigi types, but I came from a very humble background. So my father was punching above his weight to get us through school. So I think my first school, and I think, so again, my worldview was shaped in those very formative years. My very first school was a Muslim school. So I'm a Christian, I'm going to a Muslim school. So I was able to learn about the Quran, learn about the Muslim traditions, and then I was transitioned into a school called Robinson's Academy in Kitale. And here I'm meeting a whole new breed of people who come to school in choppers, people who come to school in children of presidents from South Sudan and all these places. Back then there were militias, but you see people who come from privilege. And also now being exposed to Christian way of life. So I was able to start learning about religion, understanding religion, the history of religion. So I was really interested just from reading the Bible, but also what is the history? Where does all this come from? From a very young age. Then my father was a big fan of the British royal family. And that also became an interest of mine. Why do people hero worship these people? What is so special about them? What do they tell people? How do they construct themselves and keep that power, right? And so and that is how politics. So the royal family is a political family. They're not in politics, but their structures are political. Their history is political. Again, now starting to look at the African history, the African leaders, the struggle for independence. I started reading Chinua Achebe from a very young age, and he wrote very beautifully, telling the story of when the white man came and what was happening in Nigeria. So that is how I was built in understanding leadership. And I think at that point, there was a man called Kijana Wamalwa who was also a very, for my father, was a man that he really looked up to as an icon. So also studying such characters and understanding what makes them tick. This is a man who was very good oratory skills, English speaking, and trying to bring the Luya community together back then, all those things happening. And me now studying and looking around. And I think the other subject of interest of mine was Mr. Raila Odinga. He was a young rabble rouser back then, coming up in politics. And I was watching these guys from a very young age and reading back in history to the Pio Gama Pintos, to the Tom Boyers that died, trying to understand why they were killed. And so from that age, I had an interest in leadership, governance, and politics. I think around that time you were reading a lot of history about assassinations. Many African leaders were being assassinated across the continent. So I would say those were my formative, years that shaped my view of governance, of leadership, and politics.
You then you started Mental 360.
Yes.
What is the story around Mental 360? And the way I want you to probably answer this question is getting back to the mental state of this country.
Yes.
Especially the people that are asked to shoulder the burden of these people, of this country, the men.
Yeah.
You get married, you're the protector, you're the provider of your family, and then you become a politician. You are expected to run this country, and so on and so forth. What was the idea around 360, Mental 360, and how did it come about?
Yeah, so Mental 360 I think starts somewhere around 1994.
Okay.
I grew up in my home, which I've just talked about, and a troubled home because my father and mother were not in good terms a lot of the time, and to the point where my mother left home. And how she left was quite tragic because there was an attempted suicide. And from, again, that young age, my mother had to, she went to hospital and she survived but never came back home. So that it became, we grew up in a single parent home, and there was that stigma, you're from a single parent home, you lack maybe some things, your mother attempted suicide. It's a conversation, right, that you're shielded from, but one that gets to you at some point. And so many years later, when I was in high school, and I went to Alliance High School, and this is a school of the elites in terms of performance in school, and hearing stories of old boys and young men still in school, some of them who died by suicide. It became a really trigger for me, looking back to my upbringing and my family. And when I went to university, I became a student leader. Again, I joined politics, became a student leader, and we would read security reports. And I think every semester there would be at least 1 or 2 suicides. Now, these are all young people. And I look back at my mother, she was probably in her 20s, maybe 25, 26. And I realized that there's certain gaps in our society when it comes to conversations about mental health. For many years, we used to look at mental health as people who walk naked on the streets. But mental health is in offices, is in suits and ties, is in big homes and small homes alike. It cuts across the social spectrum. And I think realizing, and starting to learn, because we never taught these things at school. You never had the word depression or anxiety or, in school. You just know that you had to have stress and deal with stress or perform in school, and that pressure and the kind of impact it has on a young brain is rarely discussed. So again, Alliance High School, high pressure environment, everybody's getting A's. You cannot come out of that school without an A. So now, coming out of school, I think I went to work for a PR company. I had done accounting in school myself, accounts and economics. By month 2 in that organization, I realized I'm really struggling to sit here. I'm really struggling to focus. I'm overwhelmed by stress. I think at that point in time, I was dealing with a lot of relational issues. Just reconnected with my mother, found out how she's doing. I'm having difficult relationships, as many young people do, especially boys, with their father, and navigating relationships with the significant others. I got to a point where I started feeling, bro, this life is and again, you are jobless. So I'm jobless. At that point, I'm also a young father trying to navigate life. It became hot. There was high pressure. There was too much expectation, and that weight was weighing on me. And as I was going through this, at one point when I started thinking life is not worth it, I said, aha, this is where people get to. And many people are at that stage. And as I was navigating through that, I remember my landlord's son died by suicide. And at this point, I'm thinking, these are too many. I mean, I'm reflecting back when I was 4 years old to the people I know from high school, brilliant people, to someone who I consider who's living a privileged life. And I said, I have to do something about it. It started as a conversation using stories. I reached out to a friend of mine who we went to high school together, who had talked on Facebook about his mental health. And we decided to use our stories to talk about these issues. So we went to my former high school and we had a conversation. I remember the guidance and counseling teacher telling us, we need all the support. Come to actually talk to Form 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. So we had to do 4 days of engaging each class. And out of that conversation, about 25 kids reached out for the very first time needing support. And coming out here to look for people who can volunteer was very hard. So what I decided to do was to go to university and get young psychologists. And I got so many of them. And we started as a volunteer movement, working to support people in schools when on matters mental health. What happened next was a call to go talk about mental health in the creative industry because someone had heard about our work. And from then on, it just grew and grew, because when we did the mental health and creative industry, some people in there were corporates. They called us to talk about mental health in their office spaces. We started charging those ones as much as we were doing social impact work for the communities. And it just grew in leaps and bounds over the years. And now it's a fully fledged organization. When you hear stories of people who say, I started my restaurant with a pinch of salt and some soup, that is how Metro 360 started, because I was jobless, just a story of resilience and knowing there's a gap, being affected by it, and going to do something about it.
I want to ask you a question about mental health.
Yes.
Thank you for starting mental health. First of all, I'm not sure. So there's a lady who told me that every time there's an electioneering period, she has trauma of 2007. And there's the trauma of 2013, there's the trauma of 2017, there's the trauma of 2022. There's even a trauma as late as last year or this year. When we went to AU, when was it? When we were trying to get the AU to come to Kenya.
and failed again. It was last year. Yeah, it was last year.
And I've never understood, but probably you guys have known this, because for me, during elections, I hardly look at results trickling in, because it's very traumatic for a lot of people. And even if you look at the Nyanza, you look at the mountain, you look at Cumberland, there's a lot of trauma. Do you guys often deal with, do you think that we have a political trauma in this country?
Yeah, most definitely. I think what you're talking about when you talk about someone experiencing trauma during election period is what someone could describe as a post-traumatic stress disorder. Many people who've experienced violence. Elections in Kenya have always been marred with violence. Tribal violence, usually instigated by politicians. If you look back from Moi's time, for the very first time when you're having multi-party elections, there was a lot of violence coming with that election. There was a lot of tribal innuendos and propaganda being pushed by politicians. I think the summit of it all came in 2007, where the post-election violence had killed thousands of people. I think it's a lot more than what was declared. And when people experience such traumatic events, anytime an election, because like you can see right now, there's already tribal narratives being pushed around. They trigger people who've experienced such experiences. People were chased away, for example, in 2007 from their homes. They have never moved back to their homes up to this point. There are internal displaced persons who up to this point are still living in, you remember the IDP issue? They're still living in ramshackle places in settlements. Together up to this point. And these are people who had land, who had shops, who had homes. And so anytime such things happen, they trigger people to react. Now, political violence is something that started way before politics was being done by Africans. It started with the colonial masters. When the British were ruling us, violence was a tool for suppression, was a political tool to subjugate the locals. Tribalism was being, actually the seeds were planted then by the white man. So that history is there. You even have the children of the Mau Mau up to now, who apart from suffering PTSD from such experiences, they still suffer economic, let me call it economic violence, because up to this point, there's never been reparations. They've never gotten back their lands. So again, it's trauma upon trauma upon trauma, because with every generation, you're giving birth and re-traumatizing. Because, for example, if I'm a father who was experiencing violence, right? When I get home, if you study even people who go into war, like soldiers, they relive those memories, and it comes out in violence sometimes, and that trauma is then passed down, because when you come home and you're a violent father, abusive or abusive mother, it transmits to your children, and then they transmit it to their children. And when it's compounded by poverty, it just becomes a cocktail that carries forward. And then when you compound it with the political violence and instability, it keeps cooking.
Yeah.
At some point, we have to cut that cord. Yes.
We have, in 2013, the former President Uhuru Kenyatta took over this country.
Yeah.
Together with his deputy, William Ruto.
Yes.
Whatever happened, they were re-elected in 2017. And so in 2022, the person that had deputized the other president has now taken over as the head of government. I want to go back to Kikao, but before I go back to Kikao, I think that maybe, because I think you should answer this question together with Kikao, because I think Kikao has the dream. What has been progressively going wrong with the country from Uhuru's time to the culmination of now the Gen Zs pouring into the streets in 2024?
Well, I think from Uhuru's time, yes, but the problem starts from independence. But let me cut the long story short. Let's go to when multipartyism was introduced. Again, every person you see now is a character who has been in the KANU government. If you look at Kalonzo, he got into politics in 1985, was the blue-eyed boy from Moi in Ukambani. Raila, the very first handshake was with Moi, served as a minister in the KANU government. Mudavadi, appointed the shortest-serving vice president in the history of this country. Uhuru handed over the baton by Moi himself. Ruto, a Moi acolyte, coming into politics through YK92. So all these people have been there. So in terms of a problem, it doesn't start with Uhuru in 2012. It starts because there's a political establishment in place that is rotten to the core. And expecting any meaningful change from it is sitting down under a palm tree or a mango tree expecting to have coconuts. It will never happen. Because these are people, let's look at our president currently. He comes into politics at a very young age, around 32 there. I think gets elected into elective politics around 96, I think.
96, yeah.
96. Makes his first big money as YK92. This is money that was being laundered by government to re-elect President Moi, who takes power. So already your foundation is through corruption, right? You come through. That is a system that breeds you and brings you up. You won't do any better. You make your money then over the years. So for example, all these politicians who are billionaires, if you go ask them, how did you make your billions? No one will give you an answer. No one is doing any industry. There will be jobs for these young people. No one is doing any major innovations that you would say, oh, this is how they made their money.
We have a Microsoft in Africa.
Yes, but all this money is being drawn from the coffers, from the public coffers. Spent, a penny on the dollar is spent every election cycle on buying and bribing people, and then political narratives and tribal narratives are pushed, and that's what our political class has become, right? Now, when you go back to Uhuru, we are seeing now, grand corruption coming to the fore. It has always been grand, but now it's more pronounced. It's more frequent, right? We are seeing now that even state assets, things that we hold dear, are being given away or taken away by government. There's a lot of privatization happening. Recently, we heard about the Kenya ports, the Kenya pipeline being privatized. Again, these are things that make money for the government. The only things that make money for the government currently are being privatized. So there's this history of looting from the coffers that people know, and they will never change from it. Because like for me, I'm not saying that privatization is bad, but the process needs to be transparent. For example, when you're trying to lease the airport, are there competitive bids? Is it transparent? If there are no competitive bids, is it transparent? Is it done through the proper channels? Is that information in Parliament? When a state assets like the airport is being leased away and a senator or an MP cannot tell you about it, that's recipe for chaos. It means we are auctioning out our country, and that's the problem with the establishment. Yes.
And then comes, I spoke with a Gen Z the other day, and he was telling me that the only way we can change this country is through a forceful revolution. Do you believe so?
No.
All right, people of the internet, I hope that you're enjoying this episode very much. And I just had a break to tell you about my new book. You know, everybody says that there is no job, and that is true. Also, that was me 10 years ago. The problem is that everybody is trying to get a job in their town, in their city, in their marketplace. They ask friends for jobs, mothers call uncles, uncles call brothers, but there are no jobs. Let me tell you what no one is telling you. Jobs migrated online. What I actually mean is there are many, many jobs around the world, and there is no one to do them except you. I work for Americans myself. I work for Europeans. I work for the Chinese. I work for the Australians. I work for the Canadians. And so, because I have done so much for myself, I said to myself, you know what? I should compile what I've been doing for the last 15 years. So in 2024, I wrote a digital book called Goldmine 18 Hustles for Africans. And then in 2025, AI came. People say AI is taking away our jobs. And for me, I'm going to say false. There are actually AI jobs. Jobs are not being taken by AI, but there are new jobs online that are there because of AI. Now, mimi ni nani? I created more jobs. And for now, in my book, in my new book, we have 25 online and offline jobs that you can leverage on if you do not have a job. So in this powerful volume 2, I share 25 new actionable online hustles specifically researched and tailored for Africans. My new book provides clear step-by-step guidance drawing from my extensive experience and research, including the mistakes I've made and lessons I've learned over the 15 years that I have worked online. So what can you do online? You can become an executive assistant for busy folks in Europe, America, Canada, and get paid for tasks like watching videos and taking online surveys. Okay? You can build a lot of things. Build a business as a virtual assistant, start an e-commerce shop without capital, be an affiliate marketer, or you can also become actually an English tutor and tens of AI jobs. If you have a job, that is fine. But I also know that you can buy this book for that brother, for that sister, for that mother, for that cousin, for that husband who is watching Netflix all day at home. Buy it for your friend who is always asking for cash. You know that friend. Now, all the information is on the description below. You can also inbox me, you can WhatsApp me, or go to my website, which is odworjegero.co.ke. And now, back to programming.
No, I mean, it's one of the options. When you corner a snake, it will bite you. That option will be there for future generations or even imminent generations. But I don't think we're there yet. And the problem with such a way of doing things is you have a process of destabilization. And there's no telling how you get out of it. You can look at Libya. You can look at all these other countries that have had the Arab Spring. That violence becomes, even Sudan, look at Sudan, for example. It's very hard to come out of a bloody revolution. Because we have an option for a ballot revolution, that is the easiest option as at now. And that's why Kikao exists. That how can we get young leaders into a political platform that truly represents their aspirations and visions. In the event that, because I know government will frustrate, as it is frustrating, people who are trying to register parties, how can we find a solution to get into mainstream politics? Can we change the narrative? Because we hold the power in our hands, Jagero. We live in a generation where we have podcasts. You don't need to go to NTV and pay I don't know how much money to have a conversation about politics. You have your own social media platforms. People like Kasimuel and Shakira. I mean, Morara, 20 years ago, they would be nowhere. But because of social media, we're able to push messages out at scale. So we have the power in our hands, I think, that there's a ballot option that we can work with. But even as we work towards that ballot option, we should be alive because to the things that government is doing. When government kills people like Albert Ojwang, right, for airing their views or sharing information that is true, yeah? When government kills an innocent protester, we can't just sit back and say we are waiting for the election. You know, we have to stand up and say, no, we cannot take this. So that calls for protests. That calls for, and again, so it's a balance, right? That we still have a ballot option, but if push comes to shove, if someone imposes themselves on us, then we have other options. Yes.
Kikao, you told me that you don't get into office. You don't take political office by way of an NGO.
Yes.
By way of a corporate body. You have to take politics using a political vehicle. Yeah. That is a political party. But first I want to ask you about Kikao. What is Kikao? How does it work? How did it penetrate 40 counties in a space of 1 year?
Yeah, so Kikao, starts with myself and a few others, Shakira being one of them. Some Kenyans in diaspora, most of them are young people. And we talk about the vision that we want for our country. And we say one of the key things we have to do is civic engagement at scale. And secondly, we say that we need to get young people into mainstream politics. How are we going to do that? Because many lack experience. Many don't understand where to start. So there's going to be training. There's going to be, first of all, mobilization, getting them together. What is even more important is, what is our ideology? What do we stand for? Because even amongst the Gen Zs or millennials, there's many of us who are like Ruto or like the people we are trying to remove from power. So how do we also craft our ideology and understand who we are so that when we come together, we have a unity of purpose, not just unity for the sake of it. We don't just say Ruto must go and replace Ruto with another Ruto. We say Ruto must go with a credible option, credible vision, credible ideology. So then Kikao is formed through those conversations. And we start with establishing a NEC. Like, we organize ourselves like a political party. And we say, okay, how do we register? We may not register as a political party, but whatever shape we take in form of registration, this is the work that you're going to do. As an NGO or as a civic organization, you're allowed to conduct civic engagement. You're allowed to train leaders to get into mainstream politics. So that is what we will do. But above and beyond, we are going, for those of us, because not all of us are interested in politics, for those of us interested in politics, we are going to look for a political vehicle and we'll transition out of these NGO activism space, right? And so we leveraged online, digital, and we grew. I think within 2 months, we already, groups were full. And I think the only frustration was you have people who are so passionate, ready to go. Some of them just need 200 shillings to move from point A to point B. And when you're doing it at scale, you need about, 10 million shillings a day. If you're giving 200 shillings to about 3,000 people. So, and that becomes a frustrating point of the growth. But that tells you that within months, we can reach the entire country. Because now, Kikao is in 47 counties. In each of those counties, we have at least 2 people in each ward willing and ready engaging their communities in civic engagement without pay, right? So that tells you that there's a burning desire for this change, right? And that is the history, and that is what Kikao is working to achieve by 2027 and moving forward.
Yeah. You told me that you guys are joining a party. And the party is called DNA. So Kikao is DNA you've established is not a UDA, it's not an ODM, it is not for Kenya. I don't know which other ones are there. What is different with DNA?
I think that's a very good question. So let me give you a brief history of how we came about DNA. So there's a gentleman called Dr. Barak Muluka, who many of us have been watching and reading his columns. I was reading his columns from a young age. But it's a man who, over time, from at least from the public view, is someone who has stood for good governance, someone who's been astute, someone who we can quote-unquote call a paragon of virtue when it comes to governance and politics. And I was introduced to Dr. Muluka. Someone saw my post about Kikao and what we were doing, and they said, I'm a member of a political party, but I will not bring you to this party because I know what we are, but I'll link you with this person who I think will share the same vision or shares the same vision as you do. So I reached out, they made a connection and we met and had a conversation. But I was still very skeptical because I know how parties run. Parties are run like kiosks. So to understand why we choose DNA, you have to understand the ownership of political parties. So when I met DNA Party, I was invited to their launch. At that point, they were called USP Kenya. So we went on an exploratory mission with a team of about 100 Kikao members. And when I sat there, I was offered a position. And I said, okay, thank you for the position. Let me first of all get to know who you guys are. Because even from where I'm coming from, we have youth, young leaders with equal resource and input they can bring to our party. But we want to really know who you are. So over time, we sat and I got to know about them, got to know about the other members, got to know about the vision of the party. And of course, when you meet a group of people, you will never know their true interests, right? But there's what you see, and then there's what is done. Someone can tell you a million things, but they have to show you. They have to give you that platform. And so through our engagement, we said, look, we want meaningful youth engagement. We're not interested in tokens. We don't want a face youth leader and that's it. We want to have meaningful engagement in the party. Can we have someone who will give input and can be a deputy party leader? If you want to be a youth party, can we have our delegates being young people? Because they're the ones who choose who the president will be. Can you have a review of the structures to reflect our visions and aspirations? And I think from the people we engaged, DNA came out as the party that was willing to do that. And tomorrow we'll be making a big announcement with Kikao as regards where we take this relationship next. But we find that this is a party that is truly and willing and committed to engage young people.
The next question that somebody would be asking is, what is the vision? What is the mission of the party of DNA?
Yes.
Who are the other people that are in it?
Yeah, so the party leader, first, let me start with the founder. The founder is a lady called Naomi Sidi from Kilifi. The story of USP Kenya starts as a community organization, almost like a self-help group that grows and grows across the coastal region. Kind of like Kikao,
Yeah.
So it starts with the cows, actually. This is a Kikao that grows and grows and grows, and they say, okay, we can register a trust, or why don't you become a political party? Now we are pushing for political aims. And that's the story of how the party was founded. So again, this is not a Raila Odinga or William Ruto or someone with billions of shillings who comes and says, okay, we are founding UDA and that's going to be our vehicle to take power. This is something that starts at the grassroots. So you have those people, and then you have the people who join that journey from across the country. I have people like Walter Mongare, who's the chairperson. You have people like Dr. Barak Muluka, who's the SG. You have people like Mr. Kanoti, who's the party leader. And away from those positions is that they are willing to open up this space to say, can the young leaders come and take over. Yes, that's the conversation. So their whole mission is that how can we incubate and allow this leadership, not tomorrow, now.
They're not gaming the Gen Zs like they have always been gamed.
You see the beauty of politics. If you're being gamed, you can walk out anytime. And I think for us as Kikao, if there's such, we call them monkey business, that will come up, we'll make a political statement and we'll walk out of such a party.
Yes.
There's
a conversation about the party leader, the presidential candidate.
Yes.
A lot of people will be asking you guys in the comment, who is your presidential candidate?
Yes.
Who is it?
And I would say, relax. You see, the delegates have to decide this presidential candidate.
The delegates
the
or
youth.
NEC?
Yeah, NEC, yes. But also it has to reflect across the ranks of the party. That we can even conduct a poll. We don't need to do a whole election amongst our delegates and say, gentlemen, we have technology right now. Within party ranks, who is your most favorable candidate? So from Kikao, for example, one of the introductions we want to make to the party is that how can we, have a tiered model when it comes to democracy? For the longest time, people with bags of money are the ones who control politics, or the ones who have the best oratory skills, who can lie to people, or the ones with the most charm. But how do we sift through all this and get real leaders to present to the public? And one of the ways you can do that is through establishing a central committee made up of professionals, from media to doctors to engineers, who are even apolitical and who are only interested in the vision of the country and safeguarding the vision of the party in line with the country's vision, and say, okay, this central committee will give us at least 3 candidates who will be taken then to the delegates for consideration and voting, and then the winner will be presented to the public. So that you have a system that filters out real leaders from the fake leaders. Because one of the failings of democracy when it's opened up at scale is that we have people like those in power right now. Because it is the one who can lie the most, the one who can fly around the most, the one who can steal the most, the one who can control media, who gets to get to power. But how do you sift through that? How do you have a system like in South Africa where the party, if the president goes against the vision, the collective vision that you have, can be recalled, right? That in the next cycle of elections, yes, they will serve as president, but they will not be the choice for the party. We don't have that now. Now you have a situation where parties are run by one man, and they have the certificate in their pockets or in their bedrooms, and when they say, you must go, you will go. That is what we want to change. And within DNA, we find that opportunity.
How do you think that the country is going forward? This is your personal opinion. Whoever takes over the country after Ruto, I don't know whether he's going back in 2027, but supposing that somebody were to remove him and we have got a new president, a lot of people I've spoken with are talking about odious debts, and those are debts that were taken to offshore accounts, did not arrive at the country, and some people are claiming that they should not be paid. Uhuru Kenyatta, I understand, stole 6 trillion, but he's gallivanting around. The other day we saw him in State House. These people should be arrested. How do you think that we are going to make sure that we have a sane country? Because you've done accounts, you have an idea of the economics of a country. How do you think that, for example, let's say for example that you as DNA decided that you're going with Maraga, or you as DNA decided that you're going with Bright Shitemi as the presidential candidate, or any other person that we have not yet known. In where you sit, what do you think this person is going to fix this country?
Yeah, so first of all, we have to cut the cord. I think we are tied by our umbilical cord to these political cousins. You see the games. I mean, it's a game of musical chairs. Raila is with Uhuru one day calling Ruto the chief priest of corruption, and then he's with Ruto the other day now calling the other side, I don't know what. And now you have Uhuru now going into State House, and they're all buddies. And then you have Gachagua, who's out rule. By the next cycle of election, maybe form an Usumkate government with Ruto. And, so we have to cut this cord, because this is an abusive relationship. And what gives me hope is that I know the horse has bolted. The revolution lives within our generation. So whatever happens in the next election, this conversation will not stop. Whether you kith me or you indict me, this thing will have to move. And that's why I said there are many options. If the ballot doesn't work, people will go on the streets again en masse. And I can assure you of that. If this government or the political class conspires to rule Kenyans, I think Kenya will be very, very, very... Against their own will, I think we'll have a long, long, long way ahead of a lot of acrimony, a lot of people on the streets. People will not accept it. So in terms of who then comes in and changes what where, I think one thing that we have to get right is that, fish rots from the head. We have to get the head, the person who sits on top of that house of the hill, has to be someone with a sane mind, has to be someone with no association whatsoever with the political establishment. And when I say the political establishment, I mean Ruto, yes, he's the head of the snake, but the entirety of the political class, because they all intermarry and divorce whenever interests converge and diverge. And so you need someone who can give us a clean break, right? That someone could be you, it could be me, it could be, and that's why as Kikao we are keen to bring these new generation leaders and aspirants into the political pipeline. And when we choose a president from that point, then the question of odious debt becomes credible, because Ruto will never go for Uhuru. He will say 6 trillion was stolen, but nothing will ever happen. It's just a story written in the papers and then dies the next day. Raila will say Ruto is the chief priest of corruption, but we'll sit and dine with him, and even talking about now backing him in 2027. I mean, what are we doing as a country? So we need that person, because I see managing a country as the role of the point guard in a basketball game, or those guys who watch football, the number 6. It's someone who can put people in position to do their job and let them do their job. If it's a judiciary going after X person for odious debt, let that X person pay for it. Don't intervene, because most of the time, the problem starts at State House, that someone from the presidency or the president himself will call a judge, will call a DCI officer, will call the EACC and say, slow down on that, don't touch that, leave that alone, because they have interest, they're involved, or it is their friend. Yeah. Once we cut that cord, the solution will start.
Yes.
You
think Ruto is going to be president past 2027 via voting? Like, lots of people are going to, like a majority is going to vote for him?
No, I don't think a majority is going to vote for him. No. That's not happening. But also, you cannot downplay, you cannot say and be a wishful thinker and say, I'll sit at home and Ruto will go, because that's not how it works. He owns the systems of power. He can control the media. He can buy voters. He can maim through the police, through the military if he wants. So you'll notice, and this will happen, right? In the next election, you will see violence in certain areas that are strongholds of the opposition. That is deliberate, so that there's low voter turnout. If you're 2 million people and only 500,000 of you can actually go out and vote, you're losing an election. So those are instruments of power that he has at his disposal. But we have to fight that. That's why we have to do this. That's why you have to find a party. That's why you have to have Kikao. That's why we need people like you and I getting involved. No one is coming to save Kenya, Jagero. Even you now, I want to welcome you officially. Please join. People are saying Luo Nyanza, Baba akisema amesema, Rift Valley, Ruto, but we have dissenting voices in all
Baba
these
places.
places.
Baba is a fraud. I'm not allowed. Baba is a fraud.
And that's why
I don't like the guy, because the guy is a fraud.
But
He's a fraud.
so my brother, we cannot just say it. We have to go.
He's a fraud.
and engage people. We have to check that power.
Even if he was not a fraud in 1982, something has eaten him up.
So there you have it.
Yeah,
They're
so,
political cousins.
I think that the country needs to change.
Yeah.
In fact, for me, I never thought that I would be in a space whereby I am actively thinking about that our politics. You see, and this is also the problem that I find with the lack of if you're financially in a deplorable state, you don't think clearly. Like, I think that Kenyans are only waking up to the fact that this is your country.
Yeah.
And that nobody owns this country. Like, that is why we are saying that Raila does not own Nyanza, because he just have to step aside and let other people, you cannot claim that all the Luo votes are in your pocket. You can go and give us out like tomatoes. You can go and give us out like onions. Every time Ruto wants something from Luland, he rushes to you in Karen. He doesn't even live in Nyanza, for crying out loud. So I think that is really important. Even the Kambas themselves. This guy called Kalonzo from 1985 to today, all he can show us are 2 dogs and I don't know, a lion. I hear he has got lions.
I don't know about
He has got lions. You've never heard that he's got lions?
No, I know Kilonzo had lions in his
But you know his dogs.
farm. Yeah, I
But you know about his
No,
dogs.
I've seen pictures, yes. Yeah.
Kenyans are saying that when Munyoro was having a house, it was I think the people saw him with a big house in Texas.
Yes.
I think he bought one, or what is going on?
You see, and again, we're going back into those, because now you have, former Deputy President Wamunyoro right now, trying to position himself as the savior of the Gen Z, as the Jesus Christ who got, hung on the cross on behalf of us, and that we now should all bow down to him and say thank you, Mr. Wamunyoro, for no. When we went on the streets, we said, kufa dereva kufa makanga. Dereva alikuwa Ruto, makanga ni nani? Ilikuwa Wamunyoro.
Yeah.
And both of them have to go. You see mambo ya makanga anajaribu kujirevive ati yeye ndio kwa dereva na ndiye alikuwa pale. In fact, when people were being killed the very first time after the elections, he was the one who was urging the police on, as late as when the Gen Zs went on the street for the very first time.
Yeah.
If you trace back the statements that some of these people made, it's bonkers.
Especially when
that they go around now.
Movement.
Yeah, Eji Muturi, who now leaves government, he's the one who oversaw the passing of certain bills that were very, very hostile to the media and to Kenyans in general. So, I mean, these people are reinventing themselves and repackaging themselves and coming to tell us. And for the Kenyans in diaspora who should know better, to sit around and entertain such nonsense is madness. Because what are we doing?
I think people in diaspora
honestly, Jagero, when you hear the former DP going and saying, I don't know, these people, I don't know, are serving Moi, and he himself was a DO in Moi's time.
Moi's regime.
He himself, while in university, he was giving information, and he was sending delegations to visit Moi, when people were being kicked around and moved out and running into exile. People like Miguna. So,
to Nyayo torture chambers.
Yeah, I mean, it's madness that we sit back and entertain these people, because they are the same. They are the same. That we fail to see it for me is, I don't know what to say.
I honestly think that people should be very careful with their votes in 2027. People should be very, very careful with their votes in 2027.
Yeah.
It is what is going to save us. And I think if 7 people can come out and vote against a particular person, be very difficult for them. But the games that we play at Isos, Kalonzo is standing, then we give a few to Kalonzo. Mudavadi is standing and give a few to Mudavadi. Raila is standing and give a few. That's exactly how Moi took over the presidency.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you see, politics is a game of numbers at the end of the day. And that's why we can't, when we have these conversations, the two of us and other people, we have to go to the grassroots. We have to present ourselves and give people a credible option. We can't just
Do you
pontificate.
do you think Kenyans are going to say that even though you don't have some money,
Yes.
you could make a good leader in 2027?
They're going to say it, but we have to present that option.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why Kikao has to exist and do this politics, right? Because if you don't present that option, then they only have Ruto and
it is very
Raila.
difficult to get an ODM ticket because it is, I think, for an MP you need 200,000. Huko kwa DNA vijana wanapewa kura.
Actually, now I'm leading we're calling it the DNA Kikao movement. And one of our key deliverables is to get young leaders involved. And one of the things we're going to have in place is that if you do not have the resources to secure, for example, at MCA level, right? Many young leaders will be coming through those ranks. Allow them to run for office. You don't need to ask them for I don't know how many thousands. Subsidize some of these things. Look at the ability of a person. Some people don't have resources, but they're excellent mobilizers. The community listens to them. So many of them have been shortchanged in ODM that they have to get X person or talk to, and even people go in the media and talk about it proudly. Yeah. That, I was shortchanged, but I became loyal, and now I got now. My friend, you see, this hero worship is something that we have to stop. It is what kills this country. Jagger, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bright. I wish you well with your political ambitions.
Thank you.
You want to be a politician, like a politician holding an office?
Yes, I'll be running for office.
In 2027?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Thanks. Good luck.
Asante.
Good luck, brother.
Thank you so much.
Good luck, brother. Do you know the locality?
Yeah, I know.
The county?
But I'll announce. Yes, I will announce in due time.
Okay.
Yeah, let's keep talking to, talk to the people on the ground. And they will tell you.
I guess so.
They can tell you to run for president, Jagero, and we will back you. Welcome to DNA. And they say Jagero is the one we want to ametosha. Watu wakisema, we will ask you to step up to the plate, and we will support you with all our might.
I believe so.
Yes.
I believe I've got the brains of a president. People of the internet, thank you very much for listening to another episode of Political Headache. Remember, politics is the business of people. So you don't allow yourself to be a tomato, my friend. If somebody is getting you from the market, they have to pay some price. And that price means proper healthcare. That price means proper education. That price means proper infrastructure in terms of roads and everything that you need to survive as a human being. So thank you very much. And until another episode, bye for now.